We're here with Dr. Horn, the president of the Libertarian Institute, and he's going to talk to us about why he's an anarchist. And I was listening to him before, and he was talking about the idea that you cannot delegate a right that you do not have, which is something I agree with. So I assume that the main point here is that you believe in the non-aggression principle.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, I'm trying to just set it up, but
No problem.
anyway, so here's a question. This principle was originally developed by Ayn Rand. When she didn't call it the non-aggression principle, she called it the non-initiation of physical force principle
Sure.
against people who haven't violated anybody's rights, leaving the field open as far as if somebody did violate your rights, then force was merited. The anarchists like to say the non-aggression principle. They think that I like Ayn Rand's formulation better because aggression means you should never have aggression. No, what really, the real truth, that the principle is about you shouldn't initiate physical force. Non-aggression says don't have aggression. So that's why I prefer no, I mean, I'm just telling you my own preference. So here's the question about the NAP or the non-initiation of physical force principle the way I like to say it. What is the context in which Ayn Rand put forth this principle? Are you familiar with that?
Well, I'm not an expert in Ayn Rand's philosophy by any means, but what I can say is that, first of all, the way that we formulate the definition of aggression really is the initiation of force. So I see that as somewhat congruent with exactly what you're saying. It may be fewer words, and maybe NAP sounds a little better than NIPFP, but but I absolutely agree with that. That the idea, that this you ought to be free to pursue your values, to do what you will, to pursue what you believe to be in your best rational self-interest, so long as you are not initiating force against other people, so long as you are not hindering others in accomplishing the same goal by hurting them, taking their stuff, by preventing them with some type of forceful activity.
Force and even fraud.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's another way in which you can get somebody to go against their judgment, which is actually what Ayn Rand is trying to protect.
Sure.
in her formulation,
Yeah.
which is that each person should be able to follow their own judgment as long as they're not violating somebody else's rights. There's two ways you can violate somebody's judgment or force them to do something against their judgment. One is by putting a gun to their head.
Yep.
And the other is by swindling them,
Yes.
a scam where you commit a fraud. And that's why, right, cut the whole comment. So the question that I was asking is, what is the context in which he was developing that principle? And my understanding is that the context was that in the context of a limited government, this principle serves to tell the limited government what it should protect, what it should do vis-a-vis the citizens, and what it shouldn't do, and also to the citizens in a limited government social organization, what they should be free to do and what they should not be free to do. So it's supposed to serve as the guideline, the guidepost of what is proper legal behavior. So, however, the anarchists changed this context, and they're saying, well, why can't we apply it pre-government? In other words, forget that there's a government or not, from scratch should we apply it. So, what do you think?
Well, in the context of what you're explaining, this type of legal entity that explains what people can and cannot do, I don't necessarily see that as being non-convergent with what the anarchist goal ultimately is. If we have competition for legal services and defense services and whatnot, I think that type of emergence will result. So I don't necessarily see that as being, there's a disjuncture there. Where the disjuncture tends to occur with regard to idea of, like, say, limited governments or a minarchist type state, is that there ceases to be any form of competition or means of exit in order to pursue your other goals in a different way, and that without forfeiture of personal property or freedom. And so I feel like that in many respects, Rand was really close to exactly the right view in this. And actually, Linda and Morris Tannehill, in the book called The Market for Liberty, kind of expand upon Rand in the way I've understood it. I've read that particular book, and suggest that, yeah, she's on the right path. And this is actually fully resolved in having a plethora of legal services and companies that are providing legal services and defense services, and that accomplish this very thing.
Right. So but there is a difference between advocating that the optimum social organization is no government at all, on the one hand, and on the other, that the optimal social organization is to have a limited government dedicated to protecting the individual rights of the citizens, and that's the debate.
Yeah,
so
sure.
let's start with talking about that.
Okay.
Here's a question. Do you think it's always wrong, morally wrong, to initiate physical force regardless of the context, regardless of the situation? Specifically, I have in mind, say you're under extreme duress, and say you're lost in the forest and you're dying of thirst, and you come up with a well there that's available. The guy won't give you any water. He won't sell you any water. Would it be morally wrong for you to steal the water to survive? In other words, to violate NAP, to use the shorter term.
Well, so that presents some really interesting, kind of scenarios here, and I'm not sure that it's possible to answer every single one. But there's, the reason why we have these types of organizations in the first place, right, is to resolve disputes as they come up. And so if there is a dispute that is, for instance, say, like, a good example might be you need to push somebody out of the way of an incoming car, like that. You're initiating force to push them out of the way of the incoming car or pull them away from it or something like that. Now, one of a couple of things could happen there. The person could say, like, well, now there's a dispute has arisen, and now we need to go to arbitration, or we need to first resolve it amongst ourselves. Then maybe we go to arbitration. Maybe it could continue to escalate. But ultimately, the organizations that provide the legal services to that will be the mediator of those types of conflicts. Now, when it comes to a situation like the man who doesn't want to sell you water or something, is he within his rights to do it? Yeah, he's within his rights to do it, but it also doesn't answer the question, is it moral for him to do so? I think he's morally wrong to do it, even if he's within his right to do it.
I agree, but I was asking about whether you personally would violate the NAP principle under those circumstances.
Okay. So you're asking whether if I would permit the person to do that.
If you would do it. If you personally, if you were in that situation, would you violate NAP?
Probably, but with the understanding that because I'm also violating that person's rights, I am obligated to provide restitution. Because
I agree.
Because I have initiated force in that case.
Absolutely. So we agree completely. So you don't hold the NAP principle like some anarchists do, which is under no circumstances will they violate NAP, regardless of whether they have to lose their life for it.
There comes. It's like there's different degrees of that, right? Like, for instance, you could come up with a scenario of, well, am I obligated to sacrifice my own life because somebody is threatening to kill a child or something to that effect, unless I do X action for them? Maybe I ought to sacrifice my own life. Maybe I'm not necessarily obligated to do so, via the NAP principle, but maybe I ought not to morally in a different way. So the NAP doesn't always provide you with every ethical scenario solution. We are always more than libertarians and more than this. Like, this is our political ethical principle, not a comprehensive moral principle in every possible scenario that can be conceived upon.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about what should be legal and what should not be legal, and morality is a deeper and larger field. In fact, it is ultimately it's the only way you can justify any political system or any political organization is back to morality. So here's if we want to talk about morality, the fundamental question there is, what is your ultimate value? Mm-hmm. So by that I mean, what is your highest supreme good, highest value, like the Greeks called it, the supreme good? What is for you an end which is not a means to any other end, mm-hmm. and all the other ends are a means to it? So that's what I mean by ultimate value. So what is your ultimate value?
Well, okay, so as a Christian in particular, we believe that the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever, and that is our highest theological value, and that has a lot of entailments to it. It involves a relationship between me and the Creator. It involves the mutual enjoyment of each other. So there's a very rational self-interest element to that. My ultimate goal is to enjoy